You know what your problem is? I ain't got no problem, man. Don't tell me that. My problem is.
Fans watched Scrappy's turbulent journey, which included highs and lows in his career and relationships with his family, unfold on television for years. It was unforeseeable how Scrappy's actions would damage his reputation. Scrappy had long been a staple of love in hip-hop Atlanta, known for his intense anger and loyalty to those in his close group. It all began during a particularly hot disagreement with the Khaotic, known for his bold demeanor and propensity to cause problems. A fellow cast member who was unruly and never held back from speaking his mind had become at odds with Scrappy over a minor issue that swiftly got out of hand. As accusations and comments were exchanged, what had begun as a dispute quickly turned into a full-on altercation. Scrappy, who had a very short fuse, was about to lose it when Scrappy was furious. He threatened destruction with more than just words. His tone was ominous, and the words themselves lacked much meaning. Tension rose as the two guys spoke incoherently, but Scrappy's threats were what would finally bring about his downfall. The crew and producers who had seen the individual who had crossed the line behind the cameras were taken aback because this wasn't simply another tense argument. It was swift. Even while reality television has long been marketed as chaos and drama, there were boundaries, and the Love and Hip Hop series maintained a zero-tolerance policy on threats and violence. Scrappy's outburst was swiftly deemed to have violated those bounds by the authorities. One of the most identifiable characters on the show, Scrappy, lost his job, though not immediately. Was swift? Hip-hop and love. Since the beginning of the show, Atlanta has played a significant role in Scrappy's career. On the platform, he had been able to showcase his life, his music, and his complex relationships with his family, but now everything was at risk. The decision was made after careful consideration of the potential impact on the show's reputation, as well as the safety of the actors and crew. Supporters were divided over a vulnerable moment when the news broke. Some were upset with Scrappy for being irascible and creating trouble. Being fired meant more to Scrappy than the termination of a television show. It was a reminder of his rage and his inability to control it. Some, however, believed that the show's hasty decision reflected the fine balance reality stars typically walk between entertainment and personal consequences. In the days that followed, treated with passion, Scrappy said nothing and thought about what he had done for a long time. He had always come off as arrogant and self-assured in public, but the truth of what had happened behind the scenes became clear. He had harmed himself, which had harmed his career. Despite the fallout, he kept making appearances on the show, but his feud with Scrappy persisted. Historical background. Although Scrappy was not on the show for a long time, it went on. The anger that had protected him now stood between him and success, and the lesson was harsh but essential. Losing his place on hip-hop and love.
I'm probably too hard or something, took something the wrong way or something like that, you know? So I want to say, I'm sorry to Khaotic, you know?
We're getting somewhere. We're not. But not. Because I can give a Because let me tell you something. When a over me, and he feel like I'm not a good person, I feel the same way he got. So we on the same page.
No, but he does not feel that.
He just said it. He said, hey, if you feel like I'm not a good person in your life, then you need to stay like that. And I'm
Tell me you're a good
and we gonna stand on it.
No.
Let's stand on it.
No.
We gonna stand on it.
No, he said not. Stop. He did not say that.
What I said was, if you feel like I'm a bad person to you, then
This is not about that right now. This is about you. How do you feel about him?
I never said I had a problem with him.
No, this what he do. This what he do. He say something crazy, and he be like, "Oh, I ain't got no beef. I ain't got no gun."
Khaotic always try to play a victim. He'll start, then he want to be like, "I don't want no beef." If you got an issue, stand on it. If not, sit down and shut up, bro.
At the end of the day, like I said, bro, it don't even really matter.
Cuz gonna try to goddamn. He want everybody
like, oh my God.
No, because we're so grown that we're really making an assessment of our own thoughts here.
I be watching Cuz. I be like, oh.
Okay, so wait.
You know what your problem is?
I
ain't got no problem. I'll beat your ass. You had a million times to do it. Why you get on TV? Why you on YouTube? Why you on TV, man? You a clown. You got a problem with me. You a keep talking that boy.
Nothing could have predicted the day when Scrappy's own activities would lead him into disfavor, despite the ups and downs of his job and relationships with his family. It began with a particularly intense argument with a tense cast member who had never shied away from. A man known for being outspoken and prone to troublemaking had found himself at odds with Scrappy over a minor issue that swiftly became more serious. Words were exchanged, accusations were slung, and what had begun as a dispute swiftly turned into a full-on altercation. Who had always been prone to losing his anger and was on the verge of losing it as the stress increased. Even though the two men had a heated argument, Scrappy's threats were what would ultimately lead to his demise. He threatened disaster with more than just words when he was angry. His tone was ominous, and the phrases themselves gave little room for interpretation. The producers and staff who witnessed the incident were taken aback to discover that this was not simply another passionate disagreement, but rather a man who had gone too far.
He the one who called me out my name, disrespecting me, talking gangster. I never talked gangster. I never threatened him. I don't play no victim. I just don't do all that fake gangster talking and all that. You can't let me talk to gangster. First of all, if I say anything slick or crazy out my mouth, I got.
It happened fast behind the cameras. Despite the fact that reality television had long functioned on the pretense of chaos and drama, the Love and Hip Hop brand had a zero-tolerance policy for threats and violence. These boundaries had been violated by Scrappy's outburst, and the authorities quickly made a decision. One of the most well-known characters on the show, Scrappy, lost his job. Swift did not get fired right away, but he made the decision after carefully weighing the hip-hop and love. Since the beginning of the show, Atlanta has played a significant role in Scrappy's career. His life, music, and complex family relationships were on the platform, but a moment of weakness threatened them. The revelation devastated many, and some were frustrated at Scrappy for losing his temper and wreaking chaos. A devastating blow that may have endangered the show's image and the safety of the cast and crew. Some, nevertheless, weren't happy with how rapidly the cost of Scrappy's rage and his inability to restrain himself during a passionate moment were brought home to him by his dismissal in the days that followed. He also mirrored the fine line that reality stars typically walk between amusement and personal consequences. Scrappy said nothing and took a moment to consider what he had done. Behind the scenes, it became clear that he had harmed himself, which had harmed his career. He had always been seen as blustery and self-assured in public. The enmity between Khaotic and Scrappy persisted in the background, even though he continued to appear on the show in spite of the consequences. The show would continue without Scrappy, even though he was no longer the main character for the first time in a long time. The lesson was harsh but necessary, and the anger that had once protected him now stood in the way of his success. His place in hip-hop and the loss of love.